This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman. And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Monster!
Aquaman, Wanna Beast, Shazam, Plastic Man, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Firestorm, Batgirl, Blue Beetle, Black Orchid, Booster Gold.
Mission accomplished.
Looks like Gotham City isn't just a one Cape Crusader kind of town anymore. Team up with Batman, the Brave and the Bold.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 233 of the DCAU Review. I am Liam, and with me, as he always is Cal. Cal, the spooky season is upon us, and we're wrapping up. We've been spending the last couple of months celebrating the 30th anniversary of Batman the Animated Series, but with the Halloween weekend here, we thought it was time to take another trip around the multiverse and find an appropriately spooky review to grace the listeners with this week.
I don't know how it doesn't get more spooky than last week when we had to revisit arguably the worst episode in the history of Batman the Animated Series, being The Underdwellers, which, by the way, you can check out both of our reviews of The Underdwellers in the archives at DCAUreview.com or on your favorite podcast app. But yes, Liam, since it is, as you mentioned, the time of the year where people like to watch these scary movies and dress up in their spooky costumes, and there's goblins and ghouls and vampires about. Wouldn't you know that we have a trip around the multiverse to visit the world, the Tuckerverse, not that Tuckerverse, not the DC animated movie Tuckerverse, but the originated by James Tucker Batman, the Brave and the Bold series, which is probably our most visited multiverse world. I don't have any exact stats on that, but if I had to wager a large sum of money, I would say that's the place we visited the most around the multiverse, because it's so darn fun. It's a lot of fun. We have a blast whenever we are visiting this series. It's a series that I'm not as familiar with as you, and I know some of the episodes you're more familiar with, and so it's kind of cool that you get to show me some of these that you remember from the original run and revisit them yourselves. So for me, this is the first time visiting this one. We are, of course, talking about the season 3 episode Shadow of the Bat, and no, not that one. This episode is literally called Shadow of the Bat. There's an exclamation point on this one. That's how you can tell the difference between this one and the Batman the Animated Series episode. Yes, we're going to get into our review of this today. Very excited to do so. Of course, we are going to get into the IMDb synopsis, the official one, that is, before we get into it.
That's right, Cal. So this is the synopsis for Shadow of the Bat, exclamation point, which is written by J.M. DeMatteis, directed by Michael Goguen, with music by Dynamic Music Partners and animation by Digital Emation Inc. And that synopsis reads as such. Bat-Ape rescues Batman and Robin from Catwoman. Later, Batman is bitten by a vampire and turns on his friends in the Justice League International.
There you go. And by the way, that synopsis brought to you by the Pod Tower. Head over to youtube.com/the Pod Tower to check out our entire catalog of past episodes and, of course, some great content from other DC animated content creators. This episode originally airing here in the States on the Cartoon Network on April the 22nd, 2011, meaning we passed a few short months ago. We passed the 11-year anniversary of this episode, Liam.
Absolutely, Cal. And with that little bit of a preamble out of the way, we can get into, yes, as a lot of these Brave and the Bold episodes have, we have our cold open, our pre-theme song intro, a little vignette here. And in this case, this is another Secret Files of the Bat Computer, as we see Batman and Robin in the jungle, complete with Tarzan one-strapped singlets, like their cheetah print Andre the Giant's. Swinging through the jungle, Robin on the run, a Black Panther, not that one.
Mm-hmm.
And seemingly the Panther has his prey dead to rights, that being Robin, but in swings Batman to save the day. And as he and Robin sort of discuss, Catwoman is on the loose in this jungle, we find out. And after a little bit of further physical altercations, Catwoman is able to sort of wrap her whip around Batman's neck, as we find out there's a very much evoking, I think, not only the comics of the era, but certainly for folks who have seen the Julie Newmar version of Catwoman in the 60s show. Most of her schemes involved trying to find a way to trick Batman into marrying her. So we have falling in love with her, and so we have her in this jungle looking to steal a rare flower, while Robin is again on the run from the Panther. But as all hope looks lost, Batman informs Catwoman that he too has a secret weapon, and that is what else but a giant gorilla in a Batman mask.
Bat-Ape comes to our rescue once again, Batman.
Yes, Robin. He's been a loyal partner in the fight against jungle-based crime ever since we saved him from those poachers.
Catwoman gets away again, unpunished.
Has she, Robin? I wonder.
The most dangerous game, Batman, is love.
That's right. The Bat-Ape makes an appearance, and just as it appears that the Black Panther that's been assisting Catwoman is about to do Robin in, the Bat-Ape swings in, saves Batman from Catwoman, takes out the Black Panther in rather aggressive fashion. There's a battle that ensues with the Bat-Ape getting the better of the Black Panther, and Batman, the Bat-Ape, and Robin all stand tall as they see that the Bat-Ape. I love that Batman explains the backstory of the Bat-Ape, of how he's been a valued partner to them since they saved him from poachers that were attempting to kill him, and that he's a valued partner to the crime fighting team when there's any jungle related villainy happening. There couldn't have been better exposition for that little bit there, as Batman completely explains away why the Bat-Ape exists. So you got to love that. And then Robin notices that Catwoman has once again gotten away scot-free without punishment. But Batman ponders if the punishment of unrequited love somehow is more difficult to deal with, as Catwoman rides away on the Black Panther and realizes that the most dangerous game is in fact the game of love, as she tosses away this rare flower that she had been chasing after in order to try and make Batman her slave. So yeah, we end our cold open with that. We roll credits and we get our Batman Brave and the Bull theme song, and then we come in with our main story, which starts out with Batman and Jason Blood, who I love. What I love about this series is that you had these characters that were not really, you didn't really ever see Batman interact with these characters during this silver age of this hero. But this series allows, because of when this series was created and who is behind creating it, it allows some of these other versions of heroes to be introduced to this Batman of this era. So for instance, you see the Blue Beetle in this, you see Booster Gold, these heroes that were, not created for years later, interacting with Batman. But we open up with Jason Blood, also known, of course, as the Demon Etrigan. Jason himself working with Batman in an attempt to track down the vampiress Dala, and she's giving them quite a fit as they're chasing her throughout Gotham, and she's transforming from her human form into her vampire bat form, which doesn't look all that different than I would say a man bat type creature or a woman bat in this case. And she and Batman tussle a little bit. Batman seems to be a little worse for wear, at least initially, but he encourages Jason to continue going after her. Jason as he sees that Batman is not faring so well, does indeed transform into the demon Etrigan, and the that version of Jason, his alter ego, kind of handles Dala rather quickly and is able to subdue her, as he promises also to find a cure for her and everything that's happening.
I'm fine. I'm needed elsewhere. I trust you'll start work on a cure for her.
Before the rising of the sun, this rain of blood will be undone.
I'll take that as a yes.
Batman looks a little worse for wear, as I've mentioned, is seemingly a little struggling a little bit, and decides to leave the scene as we get a close-up shot on his neck, and we see these two little bite mark sort of fang holes resting there in his cowl, leading to an ominous next scene as we get a pretty, I'd say it's straight out of a horror film. We get Batman introduced as the Black Mask and his Black Mask gang are robbing a bank. It looks like they bust out and they notice that Batman is standing above them on a rooftop and shouting down at them. And as Black Mask encourages his gang to do away with Batman very handedly and swiftly takes out the gang, and he's mostly in shadow with these glowing green eyes, and Black Mask seems to think that something maybe is a little bit different, so he begins to flee. He's clearly scared and frightened, and falls off a pretty high rooftop, it looks like, and lands and sort of shrieking away. And Batman, instead of coming out of the shadows and revealing himself to be the Batman from this show that we're used to, continues to lurk in the shadows, and we hear a scream and a rather disturbing sound effect, which we'll talk about maybe a little bit later here, but it sounds a little bit like someone taking a bite out of an apple or something like that. So we cut to our next scene as Alfred is bringing food down to Batman into the Batcave. Batman is weirdly hanging from the ceiling. Nothing wrong with that. It's completely normal behavior for Batman to hang from the top of the cave like a vampire bat. Oops, did I say that? Well, Alfred also appears to succumb as he drops the food, and we get a little bit more yelling and screaming. And that leads us to our next kind of scene where we learn that Batman has bigger plans. Is this hunger or whatever has happened to him is becoming greater, and he's going to need to get more powerful people to feed off of.
That's right. He transforms into a bat himself and flies off into the night sky, but not just into the sky, but up into the Justice League satellite, as we find out, the Watchtower here. And very fitting that J.M. DeMatteis would be the writer of this episode, considering our Justice League cast in this show, straight out of his and Keith Giffen's 1990s Justice League Task Force run, and Justice League International, most famously. So it's fun to see him get to play with some of those characters that he's well known for writing before. But yes, as the team arrives, they're sort of all discussing what it must be that has required all of them meeting at once, and what the emergency must be that Batman has called them there for. And all of a sudden, the lights dim, and Batman comes walking in with a lit candle, as he instructs all of them that he will let them in on the big secret in due time. But first, he wishes to feed them.
A dinner party? Why didn't you let us know? I would have made lutefisk.
I never knew Bats was into fine dining. Is it me, or is he acting kind of strange?
After seeing how he dresses his dog, nothing phases me about this guy.
We should keep him under careful observation.
Now, please, indulge in this sumptuous banquet. Let's put a little meat on those bones.
Good eats! A world-threatening crisis, and you waste time with a dinner party?
I never said there was a crisis.
You said you needed to see us right away.
I was merely lonely.
You? Oh, come on.
Yes, lonely. I need all of you in ways you can't possibly imagine.
And they're going to have a feast. And a lot of our characters here are sort of proven to be not quite grasping that something isn't right off the bat, other than the Batman's acting a bit odd. Aquaman, Fire, Ice, Blue Beetle, as mentioned, Booster Gold, and Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter kind of being the one to kind of pick up on it right away, and says that he's going to kind of humor Batman and see where this goes. And as the heroes sort of begin to dismiss themselves, they're thinking about just calling it a night and then leaving the watchtower. Batman informs them that because of this fuse has blown, which knocked out all of the lights, that none of them can leave, and that they will all have to sleep on the watchtower, which again just adds into the ominous feeling here, as we're in this darkened situation with this clearly unwell Batman, and Martian Manhunter sort of is just telling everybody to play it cool, and we'll play along for now while we try to figure out what's really going on here. Well, from there we cut to a couple of amusing slumber party situations here. We have Booster Gold and Blue Beetle arguing over who's going to sleep in this pair of bunk beds that they're sharing a room in, and we hear Fire and Ice sort of chatting about various things, including Ice is very taken by Aquaman. Mm-hmm. Which is just a really wacky little thing to throw in there, which I think is very funny.
Yep.
Fire, yeah, they don't like the most of these Justice Leaguers don't get a lot to do in this episode, with the exception of maybe Martian Manhunter, as we'll get to. But they do get a lot of their little personality quirks in there. You got Booster in the first scene is talking about hawking his sportswear, and you've got Aquaman just kind of being his ridiculous over the top self, completely unaware of his strange surroundings. And then you have Ice, who of course she's Fire is Brazilian, as she is in the comics, and while Ice is from somewhere, I don't think they specifically say a country, but she's from somewhere Nordic, so they just kind of make her like this really weird, like I don't know, like if Bjork was a cartoon character, I guess.
Right,
like,
precisely. Yep.
Like she's
pretty stereotypical
very,
Nordic character, right?
Yeah, she's very odd and very silly in it. But yes, we see these scenes as it approaches bedtime. We see Batman sort of skulking on the outside of the watchtower, and he notes that before he can feast on the on all of these Justice Leaguers, that he needs to instill fear first. And so we see him sort of appear as various sort of visages in this sort of cloud-like form, where it's just these you can kind of just see the eyes and the teeth and maybe the ears of his cowl. And it sends Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, as well as Fire and Ice, running. And we then cut to Aquaman and Martian Manhunter, who are still quite concerned, and as they're trying to get a handle on what is happening, Aquaman, thanks to a tip-off from the fish that are floating in the aquarium next to him, informs Martian Manhunter that Batman is in fact in the room with them. And then from there we get quite a bit of this is where all the action of the episode happens, really, Cal. This is we get Vampire Batman versus the Justice League for most of the rest of the episode here.
Yeah, it's very action heavy, as Batman initially it goes after Martian Manhunter and it tries to subdue him first. And there's Martian Manhunter is able to telepathically sort of resist Batman, at least initially there. And through this battle, Martian Manhunter makes contact with the real Batman, our Batman that is still alive inside of the Vampire Batman. And he said that he needs, in order to save him, they need to move their orbit, which Martian Manhunter is a little bit confused by at first. And through this battle, Martian Manhunter is actually Batman transforms back into the vampire and is even more aggressive at this point, and decides that since he is the most powerful of the Leaguers there, that he's going to have to try even harder. And Martian Manhunter seems to agree with him that he is the most powerful there, but Batman quips back that even the most powerful have weaknesses. So we get this sort of fantasy scene where Batman creates this illusion where Martian Manhunter is transported back to Mars, where there's clearly some destruction happening, and John is once again forced to watch his family, his wife and child, die in front of him, which causes him a lot of grief and anguish, and he cries out that he can't go through this once again and relive it one more time, and he sort of breaks out of this fantastical vision that Batman is giving him, and is able to get away. But in the meantime, Batman has also hypnotically subdues Aquaman, as he's able to sort of use his vampiric hypnosis. And unfortunately, Aquaman is Batman's first human victim here on the Watchtower, as Batman is able to take a nice bite out of his neck at that point. And we see Batman escape after this mini battle with Martian Manhunter, and that's when he's actually attacked by fire and ice. And despite their rather valiant attempts at doing so, he's able to knock them both out, and then ponders which one he should go for first, and has some play based on their powers and likely where they're from nationally, as he says he's going to get something hot and spicy first, and then polish it off with a cold dessert. So we don't ever see him actually making the bites, but it's always intimated. You kind of see him head for their necks, and then you see these two little bite marks afterwards, or you hear the sound. But then we cut to the comedic duo of the episode, that of course being Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, who are hanging out together. And Booster is certain that he's discovered the way to beat this vampire Batman, because he's seen every horror movie in history, and he knows that every vampire, their biggest weakness is going to be garlic. So he's whipping up something in a blender, some sort of secret sauce, as Blue Beetle calls it, to attempt to subdue Batman. And just as they're putting the finishing touches on it, Batman interrupts them. So Blue Beetle has to sort of continue trying to preoccupy Batman so that Booster Gold can finish.
You think this is gonna work?
Listen, I've seen every monster movie ever made. Vampires hate garlic.
I'll keep him busy. You finish the secret sauce.
As Blue Beetle and Batman begin jostling a little bit, Batman once again turns to his hypnotic powers, his hypnosis, and he sort of pulls on the heartstrings of Blue Beetle, as he asks him if, after all he's done for him, he's going to let him, he's going to end up trying to defeat him and trying to kill him. And this sort of traps Blue Beetle into this hypnotic stance and allows Batman to take over. And he commands him to give him space in his suit to be able to take a bite out of his neck. And just as he's about to, Booster Gold's secret sauce is all finished up, and he loads up this canister and squirts Batman with it, and he screams in anguish and pain as the garlic sauce covers him. And we learn very quickly that he's actually just messing with Booster Gold at this point, as he begins laughing and says that the garlic is an old wives' tale and doesn't actually affect vampires. So he begins dragging Blue Beetle with him as he walks towards Booster Gold. He takes a bite out of Blue Beetle's neck, and then we imagine it does the same to Booster Gold. So once this happens, we kind of feel like all hope is lost, but we remember, of course, that Martian Manhunter did get away, and he's left to try and figure out just what he can do to sort of overcome this superpowered Batman, who seems to have taken out everybody else.
That's right. So as all hope seems to be lost, as not only Martian Manhunter is contending with this vampire Batman, but also with the sort of zombie vampire The rest of the Justice League has been turned into when all hope is lost. Literally out of nowhere comes Etrigan swinging back in to save the day. And even with their combined strength, they're still not quite enough to overwhelm Batman or the rest of these new vampires. But then it's at that point that the Martian Manhunter realizes what Batman meant when he talked about changing the rotation of the watchtower, and realizes that he has to point the watchtower directly towards the sun, as Etrigan explains to him. So we head down there, and after some more pretty violent, an example of a thing where you get away with something in a kid's cartoon because Martian Manhunter is like made of Gumby material, right. So you see him getting violently dismembered and arms and limbs being torn off, and he sort of reconstitutes himself just in time to hit the button and unleash and open the big windows so that the sun hits seemingly all of the vampires at once. And as the final vampire, the Batman vampire, is exposed to that sunlight, we get this big fade to white. And then as we fade back, we're once again outside of the watchtower. And as we go back inside, we see that Batman is coming to, and Martian Manhunter and Jason Blood are there watching over him. And we quickly get a little bit of exposition explaining that, well, for lack of a better term, it was all a dream.
Blood? Jean?
Jason brought you here after Dala's bite poisoned you.
I knew that her bite wasn't lethal, but I hadn't counted on the massive hallucinations.
How are you feeling, Batman?
Truth be told, I'm famished.
Right. Yeah. And Batman says that while he certainly didn't expect the dream to last so long, and Jason and Martian Manhunter check in to see if he's okay, and he says, yeah, but wouldn't you know, he's a bit famished, as we get sort of a wink to the camera there. And that's the end of our episode. So yeah, Liam, I guess as we discuss our plot here, every time we watch these episodes of the show, I'm blown away by what great storytelling is done. And of course, the great J.M. DeMatteis, a legendary, not only comic book writer, but wrote so many of those memorable episodes of Justice League and Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, and just has a legendary status in the comic book industry. So anytime he gets to write a story involving the DC characters, it feels like kind of putting on your favorite sweatshirt again, somebody who clearly understands what these characters are. And writing this type of story where it is very much based on a horror movie type plot where your main character is infected with something, and then you have these ancillary characters that are out and about and trying to figure out how they can overcome this monstrous villain, and still being able to have it be a fun-loving children's cartoon, a TVY7 here in the States children's cartoon is not an easy feat, I'd say. And I feel like it's done really well. There's comedy hidden within some of the more high intensity, scary moments in the episode. It's a lot of fun. And every time we do one of these episodes, I'm just blown away at the ability to balance the fun, the comedy, and the serious nature, and just sort of draw you in as a viewer, as someone of my age in my mid-30s, to be able to enjoy and appreciate this and not feel like it's a slog to get through. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this episode. I think it very much is different than a lot of the episodes we've reviewed prior, and just that it is pretty serious for the majority of it because of you not knowing that it's a dream sequence. So you're curious about what your main character, how he's going to survive. Is he going to kill these other heroes before he's able to be cured? Is there a cure for him? What happened to all these other people that he's attacked? And the dream sequence certainly is an overplayed, outplayed storytelling device, but I don't feel like it completely robbed the intensity of this episode. It just kind of, because of how quickly things end, with a little comedy bit there with Batman feeling famished, I still enjoyed it. So out of 10, I ended up giving this an 8. So an 8 out of 10 for my plot. I think it's really fun. These episodes, I continue to have a lot of fun enjoying my first view of these, and this is a perfect spooky season episode, I'd say. So well done on picking this one.
Absolutely. I had a lot of fun with this as well. I ended up on a 7 out of 10, so not too much difference there. But yeah, I think the abrupt ending, it's either that or you sacrifice some of this ominous horror movie stuff that we talked about, the little almost vignettes where we go around to each character and see how they meet their apparent gruesome end from the movie monster, that being Batman in this case. You would have to cut that, and then it's like, what at the end? You're like, oh well, the real Dala is still out there, and we got to go fight her. And then you get like a quick, boss battle to end the episode. I guess you could argue that, but to me, it's such a fun homage to that genre. Like we talked about, they're in the haunted mansion, and their mysterious host is picking them off one by one. Like that to me, this is definitely an example where it's more about the journey and the homage to that sort of classic horror story that's going to win you over here. So even though it is quite an abrupt ending to just have Batman open his eyes and have it explained away in a couple lines, I still think it's quite a bit of fun, and you still get quite a bit of action for your money. We'll certainly talk more about that in visuals in a second here, Cal. But yeah, I think it's just a whole lot of fun and everything you'd want from a what if tale, an imaginary tale of what if Batman became a vampire sort of thing. So, so that's, I think we both had a lot of fun with it from a plot standpoint. But we will move on here to visuals and animation, Cal. Once again, the director of this episode was Michael Goguen, and we have animation services provided by Digital Emation. What stood out to you as far as visuals for this episode?
All right. I think it's pretty standard that whenever we encounter this, I have to bring it up. But the only knock that I really have on the animation for this in this show is the use of the CGI vehicles and the CGI Batmobile and the CGI Watchtower. It's gotten to the point, and in at least in this era, and I guess maybe it meshes a little bit better with the animation, or it doesn't stand out as much. It's a little bit smoother, it feels like, than some of what we saw in Justice League Unlimited. Obviously, this is several years after that, so technology got a little bit better. The CGI models look a little bit more, they're able to kind of integrate them, I think, a little bit better, but still they stand out. It still remains to be like a weird choice to me that they didn't do the cell shading or cell animation over top of the CGI like a lot of modern cartoons do. So didn't love that. Still don't love the CGI that stands out in the middle of that. But the rest of it, and I guess there may have been CGI that I didn't notice. There's so much fun that's had here with Batman's powers. It's just expressed in so many different ways. Every scene, it feels like they were just like, all right, what if vampire Batman could do this? What if he could turn into a bat? Okay, we got that. What if he could turn into a bat creature? All right, sure, let's do that. What if he could turn into like a bat creature in smoke form? Like, all right, let's do that. What if he was an army of little tiny bats that were flying around and terrorizing them? Okay, let's do that. We got to have, and then he's sort of constantly morphing back and forth in between these different variations of this into this sort of infected version of the Batman Brave and the Bold model that we know, with a little bit longer ears. I like to think there might be some Kelly Jones, Batman Red Rain sort of influence here in some of this. So we get some of that with the larger cape and the fangs, certainly in the longer ears. But you get some of that, and it keeps moving back and forth. I love that, you were able to tell when somebody was under his control with the green eye change of the different Justice Leaguers. There were some things that first scene where he's speaking to the Justice League about the dinner party, by the way, a hilarious setting for Batman to sit there and throw a dinner party for the Justice League in the Watchtower, and then they're all kind of like scratching their heads. But as Batman, after he informs them that they're going to have to spend the night there, he leaves through this door, and he leaves, his shadow lingers behind and then leaves with him at like a second and a half later. It was just like it's super cartoony. It's very much Merry Melodies, Looney Tunes style of gimmicks happening there, but it was great. I loved that. I loved the little things like that. I loved them whipping up Blue Beetle and Booster Gold whipping up the garlic sauce, and just and then even some of the serious stuff, like the tragic scene that you have, this horrific vision that John has to watch his family die in, and the crumbling of Mars, and him tearfully watching his wife and child die in front of him. Like, man, are we watching a children's, like a mostly comedic children's cartoon here? Like, wow, where did that come from? But yeah, there's so many fun things here. I'm sure I've probably stepped on a couple of things that you may want to mention, but what about you? What did you have?
Yeah, one of my main notes was that scene with Martian Manhunter on Mars, because there's this one shot they kind of go back to a couple of times where he's sort of running towards the camera with his hands stretched out, and the ground is sort of breaking beneath him, and it's very, very dramatic. And then the ground sort of splits apart between him and his wife and his child, and then this giant pillar of flame bursts out. It's really quite harrowing in that moment. So it is something that I think as much as this show could have a lighter tone, I think they didn't want to shy away from those serious things or lighten up the tragic elements of some of these characters' backstories anyway. So yeah, that visualized in such a dramatic way is really tremendous. The Black Mask chase, as you kind of already touched on, is quite great. I think we get the blood red skies of Gotham, and Batman sort of, you just see him almost entirely in silhouette with just these green eyes for most of it, and he kind of has the big like shoulder spike things that he had on his cape in a lot of 90s, especially feel like a lot of the 90s Batman runs had that look to them, but yeah, and just again, you just sort of see the silhouette until the very end, and then him sort of peering down at Black Mask's neck, and then the cutaway as you sort of pan out, and you just hear the scream and the as already mentioned, this really harrowing bite sound effect. And yeah, I think that one's great. And then we would be remiss not to talk about how fun and wacky that opening preview that we get, the vignette at the start of the show, with Batman and Robin in full Tarzan garb, and Bat-Ape fighting the Panther, and Catwoman in sort of her classic 1940s look as well. It's so fun. There's so many great sort of iconic Batman or Detective Comics covers from that era, where it's like Batman and Robin are mummies for some reason. Batman and Robin are in the jungle and they're in leotards,
right?
Like, and it's always like, read the comic to find out why. So to see them do these little homages in those opening vignettes in a couple of the episodes we've reviewed already, I think is always a lot of fun. So I had a great deal of fun with that opening sequence as well, even though tonally it's completely different than the rest of our episode, at least from a visual tone standpoint. So it's quite a contrast from the jungles and the cheetah prints and the gorilla with a Batman mask on to the gothic, dark, blacks and reds and all of that. So it's quite a contrast, but it's just a whole lot of fun, I think, all the way through. And I ended up giving visuals a very strong 9 out of 10.
Nice. Yeah, I went just 1 point lower. I went 8 out of 10. There is so many fun things. As we mentioned, I personally am not a horror movie guy, so I think there's probably, I'm sure, some horror movie references in there other than just the general beat by beat of how the story went. I did notice there was an homage. I believe it's a Vincent Price line. Batman opens the door and he goes, "Good evening." I'm pretty sure that's like attributed to like Vincent Price, for characters that he played in the 70s and 60s on different horror shows. So so you have had some great visuals and homages, and I love that some of these, as I mentioned, we get pretty similar and faithful designs to some of these characters that weren't around in the Silver Age, but that also aren't that alien to what we're used to in the DCAU with the Etrigan model and the Booster Gold model. Those looking very similar to the ones that we saw in both Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. So I love that this is adjacent enough to the DCAU where it doesn't feel all that alien when you're visiting it, but it is its own thing so much, and we get some of those modern interpretations of like the Blue Beetle character, and some of the but you get the classic Aquaman, but he's got the beard, so just some great things there that make this show so unique and so fun. But yeah, lots of fun things happening here as Batman terrorizes the Justice League in the Watchtower. So some really high scores for both of us there.
Absolutely, Cal, and there's just so many fun little visual nods. Again, just perfect, picture perfect atmosphere for that gothic, creepy horror movie style that they're going for.
One last thing, I think you mentioned it in the plot, but when the vampires go and rip Martian Manhunter apart and his arm is just like crawling towards the Watchtower computer, like, man, like you said, I think you said that this isn't stuff that you can get away with, but you can because he's like Gumby Man. In the show. But man, you have the visual of this army of what is essentially zombie vampires attacking and ripping to shreds your main hero, and an arm flies out and lands on the ground and then sort of begins walking towards the computer as he sort of reforms, clearly in pain. But yeah, that was pretty brutal. And then immediately after that, followed up by these vampires all bursting into flames. Like, talk about your brutal, violent endings. That you got away with there, man. Wow.
Yeah, the sort of slow motion as we see Batman sort of transform into all these various forms, from the gaseous form to the sort of half man, half bat form to the regular vampire Batman form, all the way back to his regular self as he comes to, is really quite, it's really, really dramatic, and yeah, they really push the envelope, I think, for what you can get away with and how much can be implied. We don't see a drop of blood in this episode, by the way, and but it's no less ominous or scary when you there's a lot of good visual cuts where you see the fangs pop out, and then you maybe see a shot of the person's neck, and then it cuts away as Batman's head sort of goes down towards it. So yeah, really, really, really good job the way this is directed and then storyboarded and then ultimately animated as well. So really, really strong visual scores from both of us, Cal. And that will bring us to our third category, which is music. And I'll be honest, I don't have a lot for music. I think there's a little bit of fun again in that opening scene in the jungle. There's some kind of fun tribal music and percussion in that scene, and that kind of goes well with our opening theme as well. But I did not have a ton of notes as far as the music. It's I think because so much of this is pushed on the visuals of the episode, and as we'll talk about in a moment, the voice acting, that music kind of takes a back seat a little bit in this episode.
Yeah, the only notes that I really had, of course, in our opening little riff there's definitely some more percussion. You get some conga drums in our cold open there that sort of drive home the setting of being set in a jungle there. So that seems about right for that scene and fit that pretty well. Some heavy drums being played, especially when the Bat-Ape arrives. So loved that, keeping with the theme, the jungle theme. But I think most of the music for that I noticed, at least, you do get some in the initial fight between Dala and Batman, and when Etrigan when Jason transforms into Etrigan, you get some music that sort of crescendos into that transformation, and then some eerie stuff when they zoom in on the bite marks on Batman's neck. But then the music that I noticed the most, you get a little bit of sort of mood setting music as Batman is, of course, setting up the Justice League during this dinner, and we get as they're sort of pondering what's going on. Once we get Aquaman and Martian Manhunter discussing just what Batman may be up to, and Batman is revealed in that room by the fish, we get some pretty heavy horror movie strings. I would say some a la Psycho, some just intense string performances that are coming through there. Whether it's I assume it's probably a synthesizer doing most of the noise here, because I know we have the dynamic music partners responsible for the soundtrack for this show. So I assume it's probably not orchestral or a live orchestra, but a facsimile, but still really good. Drives home the sort of the theme here of our horror movie inspired plot, as most of those scenes are what you would expect from a horror movie, I would guess. Those themes of intense music that are sort of lay low, and then once the monster attacks, it becomes more intense, and the music crescendos. So yeah, I didn't have specific moments that I was humming or thought that the music was remarkable by any means, but I did notice those moments, and obviously drew the parallels to, okay, these are homages because of the theme of the show. These are homages to the Hitchcockian sort of tempo and intensity behind the music once these attacks are happening, or what's going on your screen, matching that sort of horror movie feel. So I ended up giving music a 7 out of 10 because of that. The fact that the music drew me to that and made that connection of like, okay, this is supposed to be an homage to that, I think was enough to impress me. These aren't hummable tunes by any means, but I thought that impressed me enough to give it a score of 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I love that. I went just 1 point lower on mine. I went 6 out of 10, but yeah, I think it definitely did a nice job, as you said, sort of going along with that horror movie homage. Definitely a lot of shrill strings and sort of that ominous sort of kind of the soft, almost choir, the very sort of soft synthesizers that come in, and then really ramping up as the terror increases. I think especially the moment where Batman's sort of out on the crawling around on the outside of the watchtower, and then kind of becomes this weird gaseous monster and starts appearing before the various Justice Leaguers. That's a good example of it, kind of starting out slow and then building up to that crescendo. So yeah, a very good job, unsurprisingly, by the dynamic music partners this week. And from there, Cal, that will bring us to our final category, which is, of course, voice acting. Really big cast to talk about this week, so we'll hit some of them kind of in quick succession, and then focus on a few more of our major players as we go on here. But we have Nika Futterman as Catwoman, and Jeremy Shada as Robin in that opening scene. Jeremy Shada reprising his role, as we've already talked about, to one of his previous appearances as Robin in a previous episode. Fun to have him back, and then Again, briefly, Miss Futterman as Catwoman. I didn't see a credit for Bat-Ape, but I'm going to assume D. Bradley Baker, who is in this episode playing, of course, Jason Blood and Etrigan. I'm going to guess he's also one of those guys that shows up a lot in the credits when there's some sort of creature or animal. So I'm going to guess he might have taken care of the sounds in that department. So, but yeah, as the demon Etrigan and as Jason Blood, I think he does a good job. There's always, I think, a choice to be made with a character like that who sort of transforms. You either cast two completely different people, or you let one person do two different voices. And obviously, Mr. Baker, a pretty prolific voice actor himself. Folks would know him probably maybe best as he's the voice of the clones in all of the Star Wars cartoons these days, and just a million other voice acting roles to his credit over the years. A lot of Marvel stuff, a lot of video game stuff, but him as both Jason Blood and the demon, pretty fun in this episode.
He rhymes all of his words, which again, we doesn't have anything to do with his performance, but the fact that Etrigan rhymed as he spoke, we've discussed that before. That's a pretty pivotal and important part to the demon character for me, is that he rhymes in everything that he says. So as far as I could tell, you could have anybody do this voice, and as long as it rhymed, I'd be a fan. Didn't seem like they put too much, maybe deepened it, put a little bit of a modulator on it, but nothing too crazy as far as the effect is concerned. So I think that was fine, because if that's the performance that he gave, and it didn't need to be augmented in any sort of way, good for him, because it's pretty spooky and pretty demonic, I'd say, from what comes out. So yeah, I give it a thumbs up.
Absolutely. And from there, some of our other Justice League casts we had on display in this episode. We had Tom Everett Scott as Booster Gold, who of course also played Booster on Justice League Unlimited. So fun to have him back playing this role again. This version may be even a bit more over the top and fame crazy than the one he played in JLU, but he gets to bounce mostly off of Will Friedle, never heard of him, who is playing Blue Beetle in this week's episode. So they kind of get to do a little bit, which of course is an homage to the classic Blue Beetle Booster Gold, though it's usually the Ted Kord version of Blue Beetle that teams up with Booster. But still kind of fun to see them paired together and getting into these horror movie hijinks when they're trying to whip up a garlic smoothie to subdue Batman. It's a pretty fun. Them playing off of each other is a lot of fun.
Yeah. It makes you want to have a spin-off show. Would have been fun for these two. It's always good to hear Will Friedle, of course, a DCAU veteran and legend. It's a little bit awkward at first. You're like, man, that's Will Friedle. Like, that's clearly Will Friedle. They couldn't do anything to alter his voice at all, just to kind of make it a little different. It's like eventually you get used to it. He doesn't have that much dialogue in this episode either, but Booster Gold, I love that he's hawking his own line of menswear, and he's angry that he's missing out on Jack Ryder's show for the evening, and talking about how Martian Manhunter could use some new menswear, and offers him a coupon, to which Aquaman is just absolutely flabbergasted. He can't believe the amount, how the savings are outrageous, he says.
And what's bothering you, Booster?
For your information, I had to send Skeets to cancel my much-anticipated appearance on the Jack Ryder show tonight. Who's going to push my brand new line of Booster Gold menswear. Now you could definitely use a hipper look. Here's a coupon for 15% off at all participating stores.
Thank you, but I'll pass.
15% off, you say? By Poseidon, those savings are outrageous!
So there's some great back and forth and comedy there. So clearly the Booster Gold comedy character continues here, and him interacting with Will Friedle's Blue Beetle is pretty strong. I agree. That left me wanting a little bit more of them together.
Absolutely, they're a lot of fun here. And speaking of a lot of fun, our other sort of wacky duo of the episode, we have Jennifer Hale as Ice, who of course in the DCAU proper, voices Killer Frost and Giganta, playing Ice. Just does a million other voice acting roles as well. And then also Gray Griffin, who I believe at the time was known as Gray Delisle, another veteran, the voice of Catwoman in the Arkham games and a million other things. Them playing together as Fire and Ice. Again, we kind of already touched on it. Fire doesn't get as much to do. Miss Griffin doesn't get as much to do as Fire, but Jennifer Hale as Ice is again, even though it's kind of a one-note character, it's fun to add that little bit of levity while we're in the midst of the horror movie. Just, you always need some sort of wacky, colorful characters that are going to get mowed down by whoever our movie monster is.
Sure, and in this case, why wouldn't it be a indescript Nordic accented character? It just makes it even more goofy and wacky. And as you mentioned, the fact that she's in love with one of the people that she's stranded with, only to realize that he is married, or that Fire corrects her and says that he's married, and she says yes, of course, to his job, which also was quite funny. But yes, both of these ladies there wasn't a lot of acting required of them, but I would say what they were asked to do, they did a pretty solid job. I'd say they were both funny in their own way.
Absolutely. And speaking of, we have playing the dual roles of Aquaman and Black Mask. We have John DiMaggio returning to the series here, as of course his Aquaman is kind of one of the true breakout characters of the series, but he's certainly on the back burner here, but he still gets a few fun lines in, and certainly I think in the feast scene as Martian Manhunter is trying to make everyone aware that something isn't right, but before they can really say anything, Aquaman's already dug into the feast, and all of that is it's quite a bit of fun. And then as he's sort of preparing to face off with Batman before succumbing to the hypnosis powers, is pretty fun as well. So always great to have John DiMaggio's Aquaman appear in the episode.
Yeah, we heard him. He was in one of the prior episodes, I think briefly, that we covered, and it was
Night of the Batman, where he
yes,
Aqua Batman.
Yes, hilarious. I'm greatly looking forward to whenever they decide to release Jason Momoa's next Aquaman movie, so that we can review a full episode, likely in perhaps a themed month, appropriate themed month for the Aquaman. But even in this little bit, as I mentioned, him just being absolutely blown away by the amount of money he could save on Booster Gold's menswear line was great. And his brief interactions with Martian Manhunter are pretty serious for the most part, but we do have a little bit of that comedy coming out again as his first interaction with Batman before he is attacked and drained of his blood. So another great just the little taste of what's to come, hopefully, when we cover a full episode involving him.
Absolutely. But from there we go to our last sort of main Justice Leaguer, that being Nicholas Guest as the Martian Manhunter here, and he gets probably the most play in this, as far as other than kind of the non sequiturs and the jokes that the other characters have. He's kind of the main guy who's trying to kind of hold the whole thing together in this episode. So he gets a little bit more to do, a little bit more emotion to show maybe than he would normally get to, as he is not only dealing with the immediate threat, but then also has the flashback to his wife and child and all of that. So they give him a little bit more to do this week.
Yeah, it is a little bit. It's weird just having that character not sound like Carl Lumbly to me. It's just an odd thing that you have to adjust to, and when it doesn't have that deep bass that Carl Lumbly has, it's like this doesn't quite feel right. I don't think there's anything wrong with his performance. I think that he when he's asked to, he equates the emotion that he needs to, especially when Batman challenges him and initially calls him the most powerful one and begins to sort of overwhelm him. And then he sort of comes back with this bit of self-confidence that, why, yes, I am the most powerful of them all. So I liked that little bit there. And then, of course, when he has to kind of put two and two together and come up with at the end, figure out what Batman was talking about, and his interactions with Aquaman, as we mentioned, are somewhat humorous. So yeah, there's some good stuff there. It's certainly other than our main star of the episode, I think he has the lion's share of the dialogue for the majority of the episode. So it's a big ask from him, and I don't think, other than it just not feeling like the right voice for the character, I think he did a great job.
Absolutely. And then of course we have the man of the hour here, of course, that being Diedrich Bader, who we've talked about plenty of times before. As you mentioned, Cal, we come back to this show for our Elseworlds reviews quite regularly because it covers such a variety of characters. It's always a good one to mix in here, and returning to him as Batman here once again, getting to do not kind of what we're used to, which is that very deadpan and very serious, so serious to the point of comedy version of Batman that he plays, a la the great Adam West here. Not only does he get to play that character a little bit at the start of the episode, but he also gets to play the villain. He's the bad guy in this episode, complete with some villain laughs and some monologuing to himself about instilling fear and all of this stuff. So it's he gets to take a kind of a completely different route to playing the same character. So that's always a little bit of fun when you get to really turn something on its head like this, I think. And you could tell Mr. Bader had a lot of fun, I think, providing the voice of the Dark Knight this week.
Yeah, and as you said, him getting to play it with a sinister edge, and him playing it, him knowing that he's about to attempt to murder all of these people essentially, and playing it sort of, almost like a mustache twirling villain you would expect, who we know there's something wrong as the viewer, but everybody else involved is unaware that there's something afoot. Maybe they're a little suspicious, but we know truly that they're in danger, and he's really playing it up to us as the viewers that he's gonna kill all of these heroes. So yeah, it's definitely more sinister. It's played with a bit of a smirk and a grin as he sort of delivers everything in most of the lines that he's able to give. And it puts it's a different take on his version of Batman. So we've commented before, there's, Kevin Conroy, of course, has had the opportunity to play different versions of Batman throughout his, not only throughout the DCAU and the different versions and ages and styles that he ended up playing that character throughout the DCAU, but then of course throughout the other adjacent animated movies and things that he's portrayed. So he's had the opportunity to put different unique performances together for the Batman character. And this is cool because we get to see Diedrich Bader do the same thing. And it's the same character. It just has a little bit of a different delivery to it that lets you know it's a little bit more sinister. He is, darker and more villainous than the Diedrich Bader Batman that we're used to. So I love that he's able to deliver that and kind of had this opportunity to be the villain for the episode. So I unsurprisingly, an outstanding performance from, probably the runner-up to Kevin Conroy's Batman. if we're gonna, the honorable mention for Batman performances in my book.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's so much fun. That dinner scene that we keep kind of coming back to for good reason, when he informs them first he's just being so obviously evil. All in due time will be revealed. And then as they get to the table and Blue Beetle and everyone again asks him what the big emergency is, and he informs them that he was merely lonely and wanted to spend more time with them. And he notices that his reflection is not showing up in Ice's compact mirror, and begins sort of flattering her about how someone someone so beautiful as her doesn't need makeup. He's just so he's just so over the top and great, and just a whole lot of fun in this episode for sure. And we've already kind of touched on it, but I will just put in this note here is when as we often do, if you don't already, you should be following us on at DCAU Review on Twitter or Instagram, because occasionally we get little production notes from the people that worked on the show while we're hyping up that we're going to be reviewing something. And that happened in this case, as James Tucker noted to us, as we've already touched on. There's a sound effect that accompanies each time we hear the vampire Batman bite somebody in this episode. And James Tucker, of course the showrunner, the head producer of the show, let us know. Just he said, and I quote, that it took him longer than he would care to admit to find the exact perfect sound effect for that crunchy neck bite sound. But as Batman himself, Diedrich Bader, chimed in as well with us on Twitter and said that he thought the sound effect was perfect, and so that time was well spent. So just another reason, if you aren't already following us at DCAU Review on Twitter and Instagram, a good reason to do that, because sometimes you see a little bit of occasionally we get one of our acquaintances or friends of the show stop by and let us in on a little bit of the behind the scenes that went into making the show. So love that little nugget, and always love getting to chat when we can briefly with Mr. Tucker there on the Twitterverse. So yeah. Twitter only 99.9% bad this week,
I was
guys.
gonna say, every now and then Twitter just redeems itself ever so slightly. Like, this is what Twitter should be. Unfortunately, it's rarely, if ever, this. And unfortunately, but it's stuff like that does keep me occasionally opening the Twitter app to see what's happening. When you have some fun tidbits like that, you have these creators that are clearly proud of the work that they did, well-deservingly proud of the work that they did, able to give us some little nuggets like that to just to enjoy, to a little tidbits to add. You gotta appreciate people sharing the memories and the behind the scenes and stuff like that. So yeah, what a thank you to Mr. Tucker for sharing that with us. And check us out at DCAU Review if you want to chime in with your thoughts on this week's episode.
Absolutely, Cal. But as we wrap up, like we said, I didn't really know quite where to drop that nugget, but decided to save it for the end as we're wrapping up our voice acting section here. So all things considered, I think mostly based off the strength of Diedrich Bader's performance. Again, the rest of the Justice League doesn't get a ton to do, but I still settled on a very strong 9 out of 10 for my voice acting score.
Nice. I went just 1 point lower. I went an 8 out of 10. I think it's strong all the way around. I think, again, I just go back to Martian Manhunter not being a bad performance, but it feels weird having that character sound anything like Carl Lumbly. So, or not like Carl Lumbly. So, it's a little bit throws me off, but strong performances all the way around, and specifically from our main cast members there, Mr. Bader himself. So, a strong score from both of us.
Yes, and I just want to add that the line that Batman says of Bat-Ape, he's been a loyal partner in the fight against jungle-based crime, is one of the funniest things I've ever heard. It is delivered so deadpan by Mr. Bader, and it's so funny.
So good.
Just fantastic work on that end of things, as well as we had a little bit of the regular Batman in our episode as well. So from there, Cal, that will begin to wrap us up, and we got to tally up our final scores here. So between our 4 categories, it looks like I am ending up with a final score of 31 out of 40.
Well, it's interesting. We differed on almost every score. In fact, on every score, but for every one that I ranked a point higher, you would then rank the next one the point higher. So we end up with the very same score of 31 out of 40 for this week's episode.
That's that I was thinking about that as you said that. I was like, well, I think we were different in every category, but yes, as you pointed out, we were different, not the same way in each category. So it still evened out, and we still ended up with a not just a similar score, but with the exact same score, as does often happen, as we are brothers, and we tend to be on very similar wavelengths on this kind of stuff. But
we like the same stuff, which is why we have a podcast where we talk about the things that we like that are also the same.
That's right. And we don't really do a traditional rewatchability discussion for a lot of our Elseworlds stuff, because we tend to sort of drop in the middle of things rather than watching a series from the start. But hey, I think if you're looking for some spooky superhero tales to watch around Halloween, yeah, this one deserves to be in the rotation.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a traditional spooky season Batman the Animated Series or DCAU particular episode. I mean, you can point to some Scarecrow episodes or some monster episodes and be like, yeah, that would be a good one to watch. But there's no like episode that takes place on Halloween necessarily, unless you want to count Almost Got 'Em, which has a scene that takes place on Halloween. But you don't really have that happen in the DCAU. So if you're gonna just throw some spooky stuff out there, vampires are classically spooky and associated with Halloween, as we said at the top of the show. So yeah, I'd say this is a good one. It's enjoyable. Also, it's got some great writing from Mr. DeMatteis. It's got some great direction from Michael Guggen, and it's got performances that are fun. It's got some great animation, as we talked about. It's pretty strong. So yeah, I'd give this a rewatch. I'd watch this again and enjoy it. So I guess that's 2 thumbs up for me.
Yeah, totally agree there.
And the Bat-Ape, of course, like
and Bat-Ape. We're batting 1,000 when it comes to Bat-Ape appearances that I would rewatch. So
absolutely.
All right, Cal. Well, that will begin to wrap us up for this week. Thank you, everybody, for listening, whether you do so on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or, of course, on the Pod Tower YouTube channel, as we already talked about, or any other third-party app. On said apps, if the app gives you the ability to do so, if you could leave us a review or give us 5 stars, however the rating system works on it, we would certainly appreciate that. That does really help us out. It kind of pushes the show further up in search engines and algorithms and all that all important thing that controls whether or not people that don't currently listen to our show ever get to see our show or hear our show. So we do appreciate those that take the time to do that. And if you'd like to support the show, of course, as already mentioned, you can follow us on our socials at DCAU Review on Instagram and Twitter. You could also head to DCAUreview.com. We have a store there. You can pick yourself up a mug or a hat or a sticker or a shirt, whatever you like there. And of course, you can also head directly. There's actually a donate button on our Anchor site. If you go to anchor.fm/DCAU review, there's also a button to donate there. However you support us, whether you do that just by those monetary means or simply by listening and sharing and commenting on our stuff, we do appreciate you, Cal. And we always love getting feedback. And we're starting to get more people like share their own scorecards, which is really fun. I think that's something we talked about really when we first started doing the show years ago, and it's really fun to see more and more people starting to do that now. So always love to see you sharing your own scorecards if you want to share those with us on Twitter or Instagram.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to join in. It makes the podcast interactive. Not only that, on Spotify, we usually have a poll each week. So for our Spotify listeners, you can interact, go into the Spotify app and answer the poll. We have a question usually we ask each week. So that interaction also helps us out, allows you also, if you want to leave a review for the podcast, that helps us out also. And you can do so in your Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a little paragraph about what you like about the podcast. So yeah, we've had a lot of great interaction, certainly over the 4+ years, almost 5 years that we've been doing this program. And it's great talking with all of the other DCAU content creators, but it's really fun chatting with the people that just tune in and listen to us talk about these cartoons for an hour or so each week. So thank you to everybody that continues to interact with us and support us in those ways. And if you want to support us with a shirt or buying a shirt or a hat or something, you can head over to DCAUreview.com and purchase some merch or something. But excited to move into our next monthly. We've been hanging out with Batman for quite a while here. We had 2 months of Batman the Animated Series back to back in honor of the 30th anniversary. But November means a new month and a new topic to discuss.
That's right. And I think we'll be going ahead and looking up in the sky. That's right. It's been a while because, as we've talked about, we don't have a lot left to cover, but we will be heading to the sunny skies of Metropolis next month, taking a look at a couple of episodes of Superman the Animated Series. And we'll be kicking things off next week with a review of another returning big-time villain. Superman's kind of a popular guy right now.
I was going to say, you would have thought if we could not have planned this any better. People have been talking about him. I don't know why, but a lot of discussion happening, especially around the DC Universe movies and all of that's going on. So Superman's been a hot topic. I'm not sure why a character that hasn't had a solo movie in 8 years or 10 years, whatever it's been. Why he's so popular these days, but I'm sure Twitter will tell you. If you look it up, you might find out.
Yes, you might find a electrifying answer to that question. But yes, we will be heading back and looking at our favorite version, the animated version of the Man of Steel from the DCAU next week, and we'll be covering his second encounter with, of course, the classic doppelganger Bizarro in the aptly titled Bizarro's World.
Yep, can't wait. It's going to be a blast, Liam.
Absolutely, and we can't wait to get to it. But until next week, I'm Liam.
And I'm Cal.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.